So with the tech industry currently in the process of spilling the chili, I found myself suddenly with a very large amount of free time. So I did what any normal person would do. I grabbed my film cameras and headed to Asia for 6 weeks. After all that flying, I stepped out onto the streets of Hong Kong and realised, oh god, the heat. It's the end of July. After using the very unusual glass shower, I headed out for a few hours into the city, but passed out soon after because of jet lag for 12 hours. After a nice 4 AM lie-in, I headed out to Lantau Island on the metro after whacking my head on the crossbar, getting onto the train and having the locals trying their best not to laugh at me. Then it was a cable car up to the giant Buddha of Lantau Island. From here you could actually get some quite good views over the bay and the enormous Macau to Hong Kong bridge, and it's a very impressive structure, assuming it's still standing in 10 years given the quality of China's construction. After catching a cable car back down to the metro where I threw myself into the AC to get away from the heat. I also explored around the city a little bit and went to some camera shops, including David Chan's and all good friend in Champagne Court. That evening I met up with Polish film photography Discord bro who lives in Hong Kong, and we explored around the bay and caught the White Star ferry and just sort of hung out and got food. We did go to the neon signs exhibition because if you want to see the neon of Hong Kong, that's all that's left. It's all nearly completely gone now. Around the city he did show me a few, but there's very little left. If you want Asian city lights, honestly, just go to Osaka. Day 2 started with me heading to the 10,000 Buddhas monastery. And when I got there, it turns out I followed the wrong article and headed up the back entrance up a shitload of stairs. Not exactly looking my best. Fuck this heat. That evening I got the Peak tram up to Victoria Peak and it was super goddamn busy. After a nice walk along the path I had seen in many digital rev videos, I ended up overlooking the iconic view of Hong Kong for the sunset. The sunset delivered this shot for about 3 minutes when the clouds broke and allowed the sun to peek through, casting the city in a beautiful golden glow. Once I'd finished up shooting for the evening, I headed back to the Peak Tram, and it turns out that the line for the tram was the longest line I've ever seen, so I decided to get the bus back down, which only had a slightly less giant line. The next day, Polish Discord bro and I went for breakfast in a Chinese diner thing place he knew about. These diners are actually very small and super busy, so me and my friend ended up sharing a table with a Chinese couple who were very worried about the gigantic Irish guy sitting next to them. For the rest of the day we explored Kowloon, and he brought me to the park on the site of the old walled city, where we got to see lots of things, and he took a rare film photo of me. He also brought me to the Kowloon markets, where you can pick up travel sims quite cheaply, which do seem to be a little bit dodgy, but I still picked up a 1-week SIM card for the Taiwan leg of my trip later on. He also brought me to a few different film camera shops. The arc body. I picked up a 28mm for the G1, which ended up glued to the G1 for the rest of the trip. Day 5 dawned with me needing to get my ass back to the airport so I could fly to Taiwan. As usual, it was a journey to the city centre using a metro with a funny token ticket thing across the insane viaduct to Taipei main station, where my hotel was. Once I got out of the station, which honestly rivals Shinjuku for its complexity, while walking around in the insane heat, I did notice that there was nobody else around, and I kept seeing all these entrances for Taipei City Mall with steps leading underground. So once I dumped my bags at the hotel, I headed down this little entrance to find everybody else enjoying a lovely air-conditioned street under the road. Turns out that this shopping centre is actually massive and contains many things, so I got some bubble tea while waiting for a check-in to open at my hotel. After this, I decided to catch the metro to Liberty Square and bake in the massive concrete plaza. But I also caught the changing of the guard here at Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall. After a nice little ice cream, I decided to head to Jung Temple as well. At this point I was pretty roasted from the heat, so I decided to head back to the hotel to just lie down for a bit, and while I was there, my phone decided to light up with a missile alert, which scared the absolute shit out of me. Turns out that in Taiwan they have a yearly missile alert drill, and I managed to book my trip for right when it was due to happen. For the evening I decided to head out to Taipei 101. And when you visit Taipei 101, it involves using the fastest elevators in the world, which go from the 5th to the 90th floor in 40 seconds and do 60 kilometers an hour.
Please look at the screens on both sides indicating forward, height, speed and time. 左サイドのモニターをご覧ください。このインディケーターの高さ、スピード、時間、位置を表しています。两种モニターで可使用엘리베이터의 층수 높이 속도와 시간을 볼 수 있습니다. 고마입니다. We have arrived at the observatory. Thank you. 행복하게 고자이마스.
Today's plan was to head to Jufan, which is a small mountain town north of Taipei. Luckily when I got there I was able to wander around a little bit before things opened and the crowds got too crazy. But as the crowd started to fill up, I decided to go on a little hunt up the top of the town away from people. It was a really pleasant little hike up through the town, just enjoying the scenery and quietness away from the crowds, and to a bunch of really cool looking temples that I saw up there. On the way down I decided to check out the tea house, which was said to be the inspiration for the bathhouse in Spirited Away. And it was here that I met California Bro, who actually told me about a cat village fairly close by. So we both decided to hop on the train and check that out.
Oh, here we go.
After a quick rainstorm at the station, we caught the train back to Taipei. On the way back, he did tell me that there was a typhoon approaching, which I wasn't aware of. Anyway, that night I decided to head to Rato Night Market for some food and beer. Day 3 was really wet and windy due to the approaching typhoon, and during the day I decided to head to some small temples that I spotted on Google Maps. In the evening I decided to hike the Elephant's Peak for sunset to get the Taipei 101 skyline shot in the rain. There's a nice terrace, I was told. It's only 5 minutes up here. What the fuck are these steps? Once I found the actual trailhead and 12 billion steps later, lugging my heavy ass bag in the rain and the heat up to the top viewpoint, I set up my camera and tripod and waited for that sky while being belted by the rain. Up here on my own, in the cold, in the rain, with the D850 getting back view. God damn it, like, holy fuck, look at that. That is something if the sun goes down. Of course, there's a typhoon coming in tomorrow, so it's currently up here very windy, very wet, and still way too fucking humid. Because Taiwan. I am incredibly happy with the sequence of these shots. I think they look really cool, how the light evolves over the evening as the sunset changes into the blue hour and then into full-on night. I'm definitely going to be getting some prints made of these. After this photography success, I had to carefully pick my way down the slippery steps, and I only fell twice. And then it was a quick dinner and back to the hotel to pass out. The next day dawned with me having to get the HSR to Taichung, and after a slightly creepy walk through the closed shopping mall due to the typhoon, luckily the trains were still running, I was able to hop on the Shinkansen, and it was a nice 2.5 hours trip to Osaka. Wait, no, this is Taiwan's HSR and looks nothing like the Shinkansen at all. So after a lovely 40-minute trip, I arrived in Taichung. While I was waiting for the local train to the city centre, a local man came up to me and asked me where I was from, and was asking loads of questions about Ireland, and was very surprised at how small Ireland was. But then he was really surprised when I stood up to my full height and he realised he was only up to my elbow. After a wander around the city and checking in that evening, I headed to another night market for some more tasty food. day I decided to head to the Rainbow Village, and after waiting for a bus in the most desolate bus station next to the HSR stop, I was finally able to catch one to Rainbow Village. Now, from what I remember seeing online and on Digital Rev, the Rainbow Village looked a lot bigger, but it turns out it's just been mostly levelled to make way for the massive new developments that completely surround the village now. For the rest of the day I decided to catch a very long bus out to the Goro wetlands in the rain, and it was horrible. It was as wet and as grey as mail. And because I was leaving the wetlands quite late, it turns out I was getting one of the last buses while waiting at a desolate bus stop next to the windmills with like 3 other people. So the plan for this day was to get to Sun Moon Lake, so I bought a ticket online, and then I missed the bus because I couldn't find the bus stop in time. Once on the bus, I got to the lake, and after a little lunch and a walk, I rented a bicycle to cycle the whole way around the lake. Because of the hour delay when I missed the bus, I only had 4.5 hours to do the 30-kilometer cycle around the lake. Cycling around the lake is really nice because there's proper well-built cycle tracks for this all the way around. The heat was a bit of an issue, but up in the hills it was quite a lot cooler than down in the cities. After taking a wrong turn and going back at myself for a bit, I got to a section where you have to push the bike up a lot of steps, which nearly killed me. And this was even before the worst bit. After the trail ran out, I ended up on the roads for a while. Until I got to this temple where there was a mountain hike path, but it appeared to have the same type of steps where you could push the bike up along it. So I assumed it would be a little bit of a shortcut to go that way. Turns out this was a huge mistake because this turned into a lot of stairs, which I had to carry the bike up, which did nearly kill me. And after hauling that bike up those steps in that unforgiving heat, there was a shop with water. I was then able to coast downhill for ages, which was really nice after hauling that bike up those steps. And then, after a bit more cycling, I got to the other end of the bike path and finished my loop around the lake. Made it. Once I left the bike back to the rental shop, I proceeded to then fumigate the entire bus for the 2 hours back to Taichung. On the way to Taichung in the bus, there was a massive lightning storm we passed through, which was pretty cool. And once I got back to Taichung, I was able to catch a free concert from my hotel room right next to the train station. For my last day in Taiwan, I headed back to Taipei. Now originally I had planned to use the local tracks and express train, but it was fully booked and I was not standing for 5 hours, so I got the HSR back. Back in Taipei in my hotel, which was very interesting with its elevator of death and prison style room. I am in a prison cell. For the evening, I decided to head out to the Memorial Plaza to get some night shots to complement the day shots I picked up earlier on the trip. And after that, I got some beers in a local pub and headed off. So after a quick flight from Taipei to Tokyo, I found myself on the hunt for my favourite Japanese food, okonomiyaki. The next day I woke up to a massive thunderstorm that was hitting Tokyo, and honestly, it was pretty fucking awesome and scary at the same time, particularly when lightning struck the building across the road from me and its lightning conductor and scared the absolute bejesus out of me. But a little bit of lightning wasn't going to stop my mission for today, which was scouring the entire city trying to find a Z8 in stock to buy. So, I have found my prize. So we got a Z8 and a 24-120 F4S. Your fucking old news, D850. This is the new hotness. Old and busted, new hotness. Old and busted, new hotness. So then I immediately took the new hotness out to the Shinjuku area for some photos and beer. With my shiny new Z8 in hand, it was time to head to Yoyogi Park in the insane Japanese summer heat. I also explored the Harajuku area, which did make me feel a fair bit out of place. After a very nice coffee in a local place to escape the insane summer heat, I headed back to Shinjuku and just sort of ate and drank myself happy for the evening. The next day's job was to head to Tokyo Station and grab the Tohoku Shinkansen up to Sendai. After a nice comfortable journey at 100 nice miles an hour, I arrived in Sendai a few days before the Tanaba Matsuri festival. Thank God they have a nice machine in this hotel. That evening I headed up to the Sendai Castle Ruins viewpoint to take one of the shots I had planned on this trip. Also up here there is the famous statue of Date Masamune with his very detailed horse. A little later though, a bunch of what looked like city workers showed up and started up generators and lit up the statue. They seem to be testing all of these lights around the area. I can only assume it's for the festival in a few days. For my first day in Sendai, I decided to leave it straight away and get a lovely train out to Yamadera. Unfortunately, Yamadera in Japanese translates to mountain temple, which means steps. All 1,015 of them. The climb up to the temple through the wood was very nice because it was shaded, but was still punishing in the Japanese summer heat. But the views at the top were worth it. And particularly for this old Japanese person taking photographs of a figurine up there. After working my way back down all the steps, I ended up buying these ball things on a stick. Now I assumed they were food because the vendor put mustard on them, but after eating them I wasn't so sure. Anyway, to wash the horrific taste of those things out of my mouth, still not sure what they are, I ended up getting myself a lovely ice cream. After returning to Sendai and refilling with some yakisoba, I decided to catch a train out to Matsushima Bay. So I was just over there looking at a map, and a big V thing, that these like things the size of your goddamn thumb. One of them decides to drop out of the tree and go past me like a fucking Luftwaffe dogfighter. The noise off it scared the absolute fucking pants off me. For my final day in Sendai, I decided to hang around and watch the fireworks at the opening of the festival. So I effect me bags into a train station locker, and then get a late train in the evening up to Morioka. Now you might ask, if I knew there was a festival, why didn't I just book the hotel and stay around for it, because it would be really cool? And it would be. But unfortunately this trip was booked very last minute, and when I went to book Sendai for those dates, the entire city was booked solid. So I didn't really have much choice in the matter.
運営本部前にてお待ちです。
My time in Morioka started with a 7-Eleven breakfast in a nice little park before heading up to the castle ruins. So after visiting the castle and grounds, I decided to escape from the heat in a nice little place I found that sold some very delicious but very crafty beers. Also, it seems there was some kind of election campaign going on in the area. That evening I had to do one of the most exciting possible things you can do on your holiday: laundry. So I headed to a coin laundry I found on Google Maps not far from my hotel. And of course, it was perfectly clean, everything worked, and the little baskets used to move your clothes around hadn't been thrown in the river by yobbos yet. So with that exciting job loaded up, I headed to a photo spot where it looked like I'd be able to take some nice pictures of the sunset from the riverside. Unfortunately, the clouds had other ideas. After finishing the chore for the evening, I headed out to take one or two more night shots. Before getting some delicious unadon for dinner. The next day, I headed out on the Akita Shinkansen to, well, Akita. Once again, because of my late booking of this trip, I once again missed a really important Japanese festival. This time it was the Akita festival, where people balance these giant towers of bamboo and lanterns on themselves. Anyway, once I checked into my hotel, I got the train back to Kakunodate, the little Kyoto of Tohoku. The town was very quiet at this time of year, but I was able to get some nice pictures around the area, and I did a tour of a samurai house, which was pretty cool. inside some of the houses they had lots of really old photographs from the period, including some old cameras and recordings, but also what looked like some nitrate film on an old projector, which was a bit sketch. With the light failing and a thunderstorm approaching, I headed back to Akita. So I saw a lightning bolt over in that direction earlier. Once I got back to Akita, I went to a Niigata, where I had some horse meat sashimi, which is raw horse, and some kiritambo. The next day I just visited a local park in Akita in the burning heat. Later on in the day, I caught a train out to the Oga Peninsula area, and honestly, unless you've rented a car, there isn't anything here. However, if you do have a car, you can access some awesome stuff, including some really cool museums and some really cool photo spots, including Godzilla Rock, which I wanted to see, but I couldn't because my car rental is for tomorrow. So yeah, next time, Akita. Next time. Google Maps, you okay? Oh fuck, I was supposed to go that way, wasn't I? The next day I collected my rental car and drove from Akita to Niigata down the west coast of Japan in a beautiful scenic drive. So I just went into Lawson's and I was in there for 5 minutes. Come out, car's already 1,000,000,000 degrees inside. Like, holy fuck. I can see why people are leaving their cars unlocked with the air conditioning on because, good lord, it is hot. Got me some travel snackies. However, there was some coupon they gave me and apparently I got some free unsweetened barley tea. It's okay. 6 out of 10. While I was organising Google Maps at the Konbini, I noticed there was a lot of interesting points, including some nice scenic areas marked on Google Maps. So I headed to a few. Okay, so apparently I need to go across this bridge, past a shrine, and I'm here. Look at that blue colour. There's a waterfall. Stumbled across. Fuck me, this water is cold. My feet are going numb, sitting in 36-degree heat. My tripod. Just looking at the map here, so it seems I'm here in this parking area, and then you walk up here and there's like a trail, so it's going to be a little bit of walking in the sweatbox. Yay! After a very pleasant hike up through a lovely valley, I found that the area around the waterfall was much cooler, and it was a welcome reprieve from the oppressive Japanese summer heat. In fact, you could actually see the water evaporating off the streams to cool the area down. Seems like some yobbos have been having some fun here. Made it. So I made it to the ryokan. Didn't crash. Not a bad view. Not utterly amazing, but kind of typical for an onsen town. A big part of staying in a ryokan is the dinner you get. It's generally a very traditional, locally sourced type of food, and it was absolutely delicious here. And then after dinner it was time to head to the baths. Getting ready to head down to the onsen. I've never actually been to like a public onsen or a shared onsen before. I've only ever done a private one. After a particularly relaxing night's sleep, it was time to have my fancy locally sourced breakfast, check out the ryokan, and drive the rest of the way to Niigata. I'm here. Once I dropped off the car and headed to my hotel in Niigata, I realised that my hotel actually had a Sento, which I immediately planned to use. Now originally my plan in Niigata was actually to head out to Sado Island, but because I was so late in booking everything, I wasn't able to rent a car there and there's a bunch of other issues. So instead for the afternoon I decided to head to Yahiko Shrine. I was lucky, getting the last train. The next day I went to Hakusan Park and just sort of wandered around there for a little bit. It's actually quite a nice little park hidden in Niigata City. And after that I headed to Niigata Aquarium to go and have a look at some fish. Now while I was in the aquarium I did notice that it was very, very busy for a weekday, and it turns out that this was a brand new Japanese public holiday called Mountain Day. And after googling this I found out that for Mountain Day the cable car behind Yahiko's shrine would actually be open later than normal, so I made my way back to the shrine, this time with a tripod in hand so I didn't have to use a pile of rocks. Also while I was there I could hear loud music playing in the distance, and it turns out there was a little concert on nearby. I may have missed my chance to visit Sado Island on this trip, but I did get to witness this glorious sunset behind it. Also, there was a weird tower thing there that it looks like you pay and you can get hauled up it in like a little capsule thing. And for me, after one glance, you couldn't pay me to go on that damn thing. The next day I was heading to Kanazawa, but I also decided to call in to see some relatives at Judo Kadani Monkey Park, aka the place with the snow monkeys. There's also a live streaming camera of this area where a friend was able to see me. My first stop in Kanazawa was Omicho Market, and once I was filled up there on nice snacks and beer, I headed to Kanazawa Castle. After some shaved ice to cool off from the heat, I headed to the version of Fushuni Inari that we have at home. After this, I went to Higashi Chayagai, or at least I think that's how you pronounce it, which is one of the old districts in Kanazawa. While I was here, I did a sake tasting, which was actually really good, and ended up with me buying a bottle of sake to bring home. After a quick bus trip across town, I ended up in the Nagamachi Samurai district, which was bathed in a beautiful golden evening light. After checking out the cafe they named after me, I decided to walk back to my hotel through the evening light and through the castle grounds. And while I was on my way back, there was some weird musical light show thing playing in one of the gardens next to the castle, which was pretty cool to see. Next on the cards was a nice day trip out to Shirakawago, which is the mountain town with the cool farmhouses. I'm sure you've seen all over Instagram. after a nice matcha ice cream, it was time to catch the bus back to Kanazawa. Now, my original plan for this day was to head to Osaka on the Thunderbird Express train, but because of an upcoming typhoon, Osaka was absolutely locked down tight with no trains going in or out. So the sensible thing to do would be to stay in Kanazawa for another night. But instead I decided to abuse my rail pass, head to Tokyo and get drunk with a friend. I also picked up Nikon's 24mm tilt shift lens while I was here because I had a few photos in mind for the rest of the trip.
Ice cream or something in time.
Yeah. The next day I headed to Tokyo Station to catch the bullet train to Osaka, and was greeted with this. So it turns out the typhoon had done some damage to the line, and loads of people were trapped on trains, and Tokyo Station looked like a war zone. Now you might be thinking, Patrick, you absolute gigabrain, surely something like this wouldn't slow your trip down, and you are correct, because I found out that the Thunderbird service I was supposed to use yesterday was back running today. So I decided to take the long way around through Kanazawa down to Osaka. Turns out this was an extremely good move because the Shinkansen line didn't open all day, but I still made it to Osaka. Not a bad room, but you know, we've got our shower, cubicle, you know, we've got our toilet. Got, you know, a bed and a little desk, you know, very typical thing. Apart from the fucking sink in the middle of the room. Also, my JR pass runs out today. First order of business in Osaka was to head out to Mino Park and Falls, where the waterfall had swollen quite a lot due to the typhoon the day before. After getting nice and moistened by the waterfall, I decided to get a little snack and avoided the fish on a stick and going for an ice cream instead. What the fuck is over here? On the way back I called into this cool little temple ground as well. After Mino Park, I headed to Osaka Castle. And as I was walking by the NHK building, I noticed there was a lot of young women waiting around outside for some reason, which was a bit weird. At the castle, I went straight for the photo spot I had planned and set up my gear to stretch the legs on the PC 24mm lens I had just bought. Using the tilt shift lens here was a great idea, as I was able to lower the camera down really far and then use the shift function to bring the picture back in line to where I wanted it. This allowed me to really hide the buildings in the background and leave the castle more on its own. Also, my last long exposure caught a passing plane. And then it was on to Dotonbori, Osaka's kitchen. with all of the sites from John Wick 4's Osaka introduction right next to each other. So I slammed some 500T into the G1. Originally my plan actually intended for me to go straight to Tokyo from Osaka, but I found a really cheap hotel in Kyoto for a few nights, and now that I had my tilt shift lens there was a bunch of photos I wanted to take, so I went to Kyoto. And then I ignored all of that and went to a tea farming area that I'd never been to before.
Steep. Jesus Christ. Let's go.
The next day started at 5:30 in the morning to get to Gion before the rest of the people show up. But as I turned the corner I realised I'd been beaten to the punch. After this guy who decided to park his car in front of everybody to take his picture had finally buggered off, I did in fact get my photo. Then I decided to visit Kiyomizu-dera in the early morning before the rest of the tourists show up. Later on that day I decided to return to the Kage incline because I said I would return here if I had a tilt shift lens, but it turns out it was overgrown with grass and weeds and stuff and looked terrible. So let's just forget this ever happened. After a slightly confusing dinner, I got the train out to a stop near Lake Biwak because I wanted some pictures of the famous Torii Gate out on the lake. Walking through the Japanese countryside. There's a park coming up with an interesting looking bridge, but yeah. Heading down to Lake Biwa to a shrine. It's lovely out here in the evening. On the way back to the station, I did notice that there was a lightning storm off in the distance, and you could see the lightning flashing in the cloud, which was pretty fucking awesome. My mission for today was to do the Kurume to Kibun hike in northern Kyoto. It also turns out that this is the train that goes through the Maple Tunnel in autumn, which looks pretty cool, so good to know for next time. Where I've come from, Kuruma Station, 1350, where I'm heading, 1134, so over halfway there. So these are it's the location, and then public, height, comparison, rock. That sounds like a summit to me. When I got to Kifun, I realised this was the place that does the noodles flowing through the bamboo thing that I'm sure you've seen on Instagram. After buying my Shinkansen ticket because my rail pass had run out, I hopped on the train all the way back to Tokyo. I specifically booked a later train so I could get the Mount Fuji seat. Of course, Mount Fuji was very cooperative. Once I was settled into my hotel, I headed to Akihabara for cultural pursuits. A wet day 2 started with a trip to Nakano Broadway, which is also a culture centre. I was also doing a little bit of camera shopping today to pick up some nice used gear before heading to the Cat Shrine. That evening I picked up a f4 from GT Camera and headed out. The next day started with a morning visit to Heian Shrine, which is a beautiful shrine nestled on a raised area right in the city centre in between all the skyscrapers. While the contact was rewinding, I couldn't help notice the bugs in activities. One quick subway ride later put me in Shibuya, where I was looking to get some shots of the famous pedestrian crossing from above. After a quick train trip to Nakano to pick up my used 70 to 200, and after an okonomiyaki dinner because I'm addicted to it, I finished off my roll of 500T in the F4. And once the F4 had run out of film, I headed to Ochanomizu to take a very particular shot I had planned. So I'm set up here at Ochanomizu, up on the bridge, looking over the subway track, the rapid track and the local track, which all kind of cross the river here. Looks quite cool. Got my 24mm PC lens set up. I'm using quite a bit of shift to lower my view down, because we're up very high on this bridge, and then I'm using a hair of tilt to focus on the sort of railing, and with the wedge shape with the hand focus with an expanded aperture I can also get those buildings in, and it looks really good. For my final day in the morning I went to Ueno Zoo to test out the new 70 to 200 and see some animals. After my little trip to the zoo, I spent the rest of the day just shopping and picking up essentials to bring home. As my flight home was in the evening, I just sort of hung around Tokyo during the day until it was time to head back to the airport. We're heading to that. As I'd been out in the sun all day, roasting and sweating my ass off, I knew that I was going to need a shower, so I made sure to check the airport had a shower I could use. It is 8:30, my flight doesn't board until like 9:30, so I've got an hour. Need to get some food, but after being out in the sun all day, getting the chance to have a shower was really nice. Yeah, worth it. €7, 100%. Alright, let's go. Because this is going to be an 11-hour flight, I actually booked the exit row seat, and it turns out I booked the best exit row seat on earth. Fortunately, the 11-hour flight is only halfway there, because then it was followed up with an 8-hour. Finally done editing this super long video. Thank God I don't have another one just waiting in the wings.